Well, thank you everyone for hanging in there. It's been an amazing week. It's my first time here. We've heard a lot about technology and a lot about self-driving cars, but what about the consumer? Where is the consumer in all of this? The consumer, I can tell you, is in the driver's seat and is intending to remain there with their hands on the wheel, at least for now. We think there's a lot of work that has to go on before we can convince people to accept self-driving cars. And I'll talk about those 4 things we think have to happen. So a little bit about why we know what we know. Cox Automotive is based in Atlanta. We own Kelley Blue Book and Auto Trader. Those are the two of the biggest shopping websites in the United States. So we hear the voice of the customer every day as they're on our sites shopping. We also own Mannheim Auto Auctions with 80 plus auctions in the US and actually internationally, one here in Lisbon. We have a couple dozen software companies that operate the behind the scenes of car shopping, so we see what consumers do and how they behave. We also have a research arm that I'm part of, and we are constantly asking consumers in a variety of different ways what they think of various things. And self-driving is one we're paying a lot of attention to, and to see how it evolves over time, their attitude evolves over time. So what we do know is self-driving cars are coming. There's just no question about that. We know they're actually here. If anybody was at John Kravchuk's talk, you saw the Waymo minivan on the stage, and they're talking about giving rides without a driver to consumers. So they're here. General Motors CEO Mary Barra often says that we're going to see more change in this industry in the next 5 years than we've seen in the last 50. And we would agree with that. And it may be 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20, who knows. But the industry absolutely is going through changes every bit as dramatic as that shift from the horse-drawn carriage to the Model T, Ford Model T. And by the way, that shift, as I look back, only took 23 years. So we're clearly headed into a future that looks very different from today. The only questions that remain are when, how fast does it happen? And the consumer's going to have a vote in that. Consumers tell us they want to be in control. They crave that being in the driver's seat and having control of the vehicle. It's going to take a lot to pry them away from their cars. What they tell us is that they want the option to drive. When we did a consumer survey, 80% said, I always want the option to drive. Some of us told they absolutely love to drive. They don't want to give that up. And many of them said, I'd much prefer to drive than have someone else drive. So that there is that whole control issue. So what we concluded is there are 4 essential things that have to happen to convince consumers to give up their hands on the steering wheel. And it comes down to 4 E's: education, experience, economics, and enhancing their lives. So let's look at those. When we asked, despite the fact that we're talking about self-driving cars endlessly here and out in the media and the headlines are all about it, it's amazing. Consumers really don't know that much about them. And in fact, 1 in 10 told us they know a lot, and I'm not even so sure they really know a lot. And 6 in 10 admitted, I don't know much, if anything, about them. So there must be some education that we have to do going forward. The other thing is they're highly skeptical. They told us, most of them told us, I'm not going to see self-driving cars in my lifetime. Nearly 2/3 said they don't believe they will see them ever in their lifetimes, and this varies widely by age group. Not surprisingly, nearly 80% of baby boomers said, I won't see them. Now, their horizon of time is limited. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, the Gen Z of course we're going to have self-driving cars. And then all the other age groups kind of fall there in between. The other thing we found is luxury owners are far more accepting of self-driving cars than are those who drive non-luxury cars. And if you think about it, they're more aware. They have a lot more education on self-driving cars. But the other thing is they likely have experienced driver assist systems in their luxury vehicles. And we know also that consumers are demanding more of these features, even in non-luxury cars. When we surveyed them, about 60% told us by 2020, when they have a new car, they want more self-driving features, driver assist features. So there will be this growing population that get this experience. So on the subject of economics, when we talk to consumers about what's holding you back from accepting self-driving cars, the top two barriers are cost, economics. They're too expensive. They're to buy. They're too expensive to fix. They're just not in my budget. Secondary concerns are technology, computer crashes, software hacks. Now, when you ask these people, they're all obviously thinking about the current model of the way we buy cars, plunking down a down payment, making monthly payments and such. But if you we flip that question around. Okay, so what would be the catalyst to adoption? And when you flip that around, they say, well, if it were in my price range, I would. If I got a break on my insurance or I got a tax break, I would go for it. And so we see going forward, we expect that there will be these new business models that emerge to acquire transportation. We're already seeing subscription models. My company is already offering, and connected with a company in Atlanta called Clutch that does a subscription model for luxury cars, and we just partnered with Porsche. We have a venture going called FlexDrive in the Northeast, where we're doing subscription service on used cars for a different segment of the market. There will be more of those, and we may see new models where you don't own a car, it's owned by a fleet, you pay by the mile, you may pay by the hour. So we believe that affordability and accessibility may widen. In terms of enhancing lives, the majority of people, and it continues to increase every year, absolutely believe that self-driving cars will make our roadways safer. But here's the conundrum. They're split about who's going to have the self-driving car and who's going to maintain control of the car. Some are willing to give up control to make the roadways safer, but there are others that want to maintain control and think the other guy should have the self-driving car to be safer. So somehow we have to convince people that giving up control will make everybody safer. Consumers are starting to see benefits to self-driving vehicles. They see it in certain circumstances like road trips and heavy commuter traffic. When they've been to the bar and had a couple cocktails, they certainly see an advantage of being driven home. They also see an advantage of expanding mobility to people who are aging and can no longer drive, or their younger teenage kids who they're nervous about them being behind the wheel, and but they need them to have mobility. The other thing is they're seeing that self-driving cars could give them something money can't buy, and that is time. They can do a host of other things. When we ask, what would you do in a self-driving car? They talk about they'd read, they'd watch movies, they'd do more work and be more productive, a host of other things. So they're starting to see those advantages. But they're not fully there to the fully autonomous vehicle. When we ask, what's your comfort level with, what level of autonomy would you like? The level 4 that gives people the option to drive or let the car drive itself is the sweet spot. On level 3, which requires you to be alert but the car drives itself, they're like, what's the point of that if I can't relax and do other things? But level 5, that option not to drive is a major deterrent. So self-driving cars are coming. They're actually here. Consumers are in the driver's seat as to when and how they'll roll out. And those 4 essentials have to be met to drive consumer acceptance into the world of self-driving vehicles: education, experience, economics, and enhancement. We have a lot of work to do to move consumers towards self-driving vehicles. It will require this increased awareness of what the various levels of self-driving do and what they don't do. It will require that they have some experience. I think Waymo's getting people into cars is a great idea. They have to have some experience with self-driving features as well as fully autonomous vehicles. And we have to convince them that their lives will be better, that they'll be better than they are now, that they'll save money, that they'll save lives, and that they will save time. Thank you for listening.